Folks, one of the members you have to have on your team is a good or great, I should say, great CPA. We have the one and only Bob Langworthy from Maine Bean Counters here to talk about investing, talk about CPA, and how real estate and a strong CPA really should work hand in hand.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining and watching. I think you're going to have a great show for us because we have two kindred spirits. We have Bob Langworthy with us. How you doing today, Bob?
I'm doing well, Michael. Thank you.
Excellent. I say kindred spirits because Bob, as you'll hear in his story, is an accountant, and actually I spent the first 2 years of my career outside of college working in the accounting field. So we're going to have some fun talking about numbers and all that stuff, I'm sure. So Bob, welcome to the show. Why don't you just tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Michael. Yes, as you said, I am an accountant. I started my accounting practice 10 years ago after kind of a winding career doing a couple of other things and wanted to be self-employed again. Real estate has always been a long-term plan for my wife and I, and we finally jumped in buying an office building 2 years ago and are now looking to grow our real estate portfolio and have that in time be our primary income.
That's great. So let's break this down because I don't recall any of my interview guests to date talking about buying a commercial building. So let's talk about that a little bit. So I think you said it was 4 offices and some parking, if I remember right.
That's correct. Yep.
So why don't you set it up? You don't have to give like actual numbers, but give us ballpark. Like how many square feet, 1 story, 2 story, how many stalls? Just give us the basic rundown.
Yeah, I deal in actual numbers. So
okay, fair enough.
So I started the accounting practice 10 years ago. I worked out of my home for the first 6 months, but we have 4 kids. My wife homeschools them. So it wasn't an environment that was conducive
I can only imagine.
Right. So I leased space in an office building in our small town here. Great setup there. We had a receptionist in common, a break room, conference room, a big copier. I liked it, but I knew when I moved in, and I'm friends with the owner to this day, that I was going to be buying my own building in time. It was just a matter of time and finding the right opportunity.
Right.
And I had an area of town where I wanted to be. I didn't want to be too far away from Main Street. I wanted there to be good parking. I wanted to have at least one other office. I'd moved my accounting practice in, but I wanted to have at least one other to help pay the mortgage. So right down the street from my old office, a building came up. It had been for lease for a while, and eventually the sign changed to for sale. And my wife and I took a look at it. It was vacant at the time, 4 offices. Half of the building, roughly half, it's 2,800 square feet, so probably 1,000 square feet, had been a dental practice. And that half was in pretty good shape. They had taken out all the equipment, repaired the holes in the floor for the water and drain lines.
Sure.
The other half of the building and a small upstairs office, however, needed a bit of work. And it was empty. So when it comes to valuing a commercial building, it was a little bit more of a challenge to value it. So I think maybe that worked in our favor. And we ended up buying it for $260,000. Wow. It's got a large parking lot, 20 parking places, a block from Main Street, in a town that has very little parking. So we saw that as an opportunity as well. Had the parking lot striped. My father's a builder, so I grew up in the real estate world. And he came up and did a lot of the work on remodeling the 2 offices on the other side. We reconfigured a floor plan so there's a bathroom for those 2 offices. So we bought it in August. I moved in September because I could function out of the office, no problem.
Sure.
And October 1, a friend moved into the next biggest size office. It's probably 600 square feet or so. And he's been in there. He's on a 5-year lease. That's one of the beautiful parts about commercial real estate is your tenants will often sign a longer term lease.
Yeah.
The other 2 spaces, the upstairs and the smaller office, took a little longer to fill. They took about a year.
Okay.
But then those are full now. And of the parking lot, we've got 7 spaces that we lease out there.
Wow. Okay.
So it ended up being a good deal. We financed it 20% down, and it's a 25-year AM, a 7-year balloon,
Sure.
and it was at 4 and an eighth, which
Wow.
for commercial money was great at the
Yeah.
time, and we're thankful for that. And it cash flows nicely now. So
yeah, I'm sure you appreciate this, but we've got to call these things out, right? In today's environment, I can't go an hour without somebody talking about house hacking.
right.
What you've done is I'll call it commercial hacking, right? You have
Exactly.
you have a job that needs space, right? An office,
Yep.
self-employed. You're like, you know what? Just like some of these interviews going, I'm going to buy a fourplex. You're like, no, I'm going to buy a commercial space, get some tenants to help pay for my office so I can still do what I do every day. I mean, I've never heard, I'm sure it happens, but I've never heard anybody do that. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And it does. It works out nicely for us. And just for the viewers on the numbers, because commercial real estate is a little different than a single family or a duplex in terms of how it's valued. So this building now ends up cash flowing $2,000 a month. So it's a great investment for us.
Yeah.
So that's $24,000. The debt service on it is around $16,000 a year. So when you're valuing a commercial building, you look at your net operating income.
Mm-hmm.
So we have positive cash flow of $24,000, the debt service of $16,000. So that together is $40,000. That's our net operating income.
Yep.
Right. So that means that if you were to buy this building with cash, it would produce $40,000 a year in income.
Yep.
So to come up with a valuation for the building, you look at the prevailing cap rate in the area. That's
exactly
the average rate of return on commercial properties. Around here, it's 8%.
Wow, 8%. Oh, wow.
So the formula then ends up being simple: $40,000 in net operating income divided by 8%.
Yeah,
that's $500,000. That's the value of the building.
Well, that's not terrible.
That's right. Now we had some renovation costs into it. We've got just a little over $300,000 into it. But yeah, it's a long-term hold for us.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple of blog posts coming up in the next week, a short series that I'm doing that will explain why it is that I won't ever pay capital gains on the sale of this building. And it'll touch a little bit on a 1031 exchange.
Sure.
And then ultimately, when it goes to our kids, after my passing, a step up in basis. And there's just some beautiful things you can do with real estate. I'm sure that's why you're a real estate investor yourself.
Absolutely. I leveraged the 1031 exchange quite well. We moved out of single family homes into, well, they're technically called commercial. They're small apartments, 5 to 20 units. Great. Back in 08, may have been early 09, but yeah, we went from 8 houses to 80 units in like a 8, 10, 12 month period. And we kept all the artificial gains. We, stepped up our depreciation. It's a beautiful thing. And then, you pass on, you give it to your kids or whoever you want. They get stepped up. It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
But I want to keep on this commercial one because again, you said some things that I want investors to appreciate. Just like you're going out and looking for rundown houses, most of them are probably vacant. Don't sleep on the fact that he found a commercial building that was empty. And commercial buildings, as he correctly highlighted, are valued on the NOI. And guess what the NOI is for an empty building? It's not great. So realize that he did that. He knew he was going to be in one of the 4 spots. And he knew that over time, it took him a year to fill it, but that NOI would go up exponentially. And I think he bought it for $260 and now it's worth $500. And it's just, you can do this in other spots than a house is, I guess, the point of this. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yep. And that's, there are a lot of benefits of commercial as well. So on the residential side, I think on the list of pros, you would have very low vacancy. Typically, everybody needs a bed. Not everybody needs an office. So your vacancies are going to be lower. On the pros for commercial, tenants will sign a longer lease. Yeah. They'll sign a 5-year lease. And they're not going to call you in the middle of the night with a problem with a toilet or something of the sort. Yeah. They really take ownership of it. And, sometimes it'll even be, looking to, do something themselves to take care of the unit, which is fantastic. A question for you on your multifamilies. Do you use a property manager?
Yeah, I've used a property manager since day one. I invest 2.5 hours from where I live. I have a saying, live where you want, invest where the numbers make sense. I live in a ridiculously expensive part of the country where cash flow rentals are impossible. So I chose a market, Fresno, California, which is 2.5 hours away. So yes, property manager since day one.
Excellent. That's smart. If we do get into the residential side of things, we'll definitely use a property manager as well. I don't have the time to deal with.
That's the
with
key,
all that
right?
goes into it.
We were both full-time employees, and we're very good at what we did. And that's our offense, right? The 9 to 5 or the 8 to 4 or whatever. We don't need things that are risky or time consuming on top of that. So I tell everyone, if you can't afford a property manager, your deal is too skinny. Go get a new deal.
That's good. That's good advice.
Yeah. So I'm curious, clearly worked out. So congratulations, Seb. Why wouldn't you do this again? I'm just throw that out. Why wouldn't you go look for another office building and do it again?
Sure. I have. So a year ago, just a little less than a year ago, we bought a property, and we bought it. It was a tremendous discount, and we're looking to 1031 that, probably another office building. And since then, I've looked at several in town, and there's an off-market property that will probably be our next property. I've known the owner for a while, and it's a good opportunity. Owner finance deal, and owner financing can work out tremendously well for both the buyer and the seller.
Totally agree.
So that's what we're going to look to do there with that property, perhaps in 2019. Yeah. And if not that one, then there are a couple abutting properties to my office building that are very interesting as well. And I know that owner, so we might look to do a deal for one of those.
Yeah, a couple of things. So first and foremost, I get asked all the time, what do you buy? And my answer after all these years is I look at the deal. Right. So what does that mean? So I'll buy a house, I'll buy a duplex, I'll buy an apartment building, but I'll also buy a commercial space. I literally bought a vacant commercial space, just like you.
Oh, excellent.
I own several, but I bought one just recently. It's probably been 60 days. It is vacant. It was actually an old dental office. I don't know why that is, but it was. It's a 2-office, right? Yeah. That we're in the process of basically updating it. It had been an office building for or a dentist office for a long time. So we're going to go in and likely rent out the rooms. It's got 9 different little rooms, and there's a spot for receptionists up front. So, and lots of parking, right? Well, I didn't think about leasing space, but it's in a part of town in downtown where there is no parking. So I just got another way to make some money. So thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah. So again, it's about the deal. So I share this with you, the listeners, because again, it's about adding value. If you can find something that's underpriced or undervalued, i.e. an empty office building, just like an empty house, don't sleep on those. Go learn, go kick some rocks, go walk the property. You just never know. Yeah. And then owner financing, let's just touch on that before we sort of go to the next session. I'm guessing one of the things, because I love owner financing, especially with people that have owned it a while. A lot of times those deals work out because they want to avoid the big tax hit or depreciation recapture. Is that part of this conversation or?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a building that the owner has owned for almost 20 years. It's commercial, so that's on a 39-year depreciation schedule. It's a lot of depreciation to recapture.
Oh, yeah.
And with owner financing, on the seller side, they only recognize the amount of gain that they're receiving payment for in that year. So it's all prorated.
Yep.
So, if I were to use round numbers, say the building is an $800,000 building, but their basis is now $400,000. If I go to the bank and get a loan and they get a check for $800,000, they have a $400,000 capital gains to deal with. Exactly. But if we stretch that out over 20 years, and they get $40,000 a year for 20 years, or maybe it's $45,000 a year, for 20 years. Well, now they've only got, I guess that'd be a $25,000 capital gain. And depending on their income situation, at the very least, that's going to drop them from 20% long-term capital gains to 15%. So they're saving that 5%. But it could also, depending on what their income is, there may be no long-term capital gains at all.
Exactly right.
They've got a steady cash flow they can depend on for 20 years.
And they've reduced their risk, right? No longer do they have the month-to-month, tenant risk, right? I would say of the I don't know, 8 to 10 owner finance deals I've done in the last year. All of them have been from owners that have owned it more than 30 years. So their depreciation,
Yes.
they depreciate it to zero, right? These are residential, so 28 or
Yep.
27 and a half, whatever it is. And they're like, many of the conversations start with, well, I guess I can't do anything until I die, right? Because it's the whole stepped up basis, pass to their heirs conversation. And I'm like, no, you need some money, right? And you want to reduce your risk and you don't want to go in and turn units anymore and blah, blah, blah. Let's set up a plan where you get $9,000 a month, or like some of these are houses, right? Or $9,000 a year, sorry. And it's just, when the light bulb goes on, you can almost see the stress leave them because they really thought they were trapped, right? Their cost basis is zero. Their accountant is saying, well, if you sell, you're going to have a huge hit. And they're like, I don't want that. I'm like, well, no, let's have a different conversation. So maybe it's both our accounting brains.
Thoughts on that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, two thoughts on that. One, if the bad outcome is that you pay some capital gains tax, that means that you made out well on the deal. So I don't feel bad for clients that do have to pay capital gains. I'd prefer that they not.
Yeah, but it happens.
On the buyer side of an owner finance deal, the deal can be as creative as you want.
Amen.
Anything from no money down to however much you want to put down. The interest whatever you want it to be. So right now, interest rates are probably set to go up again in December.
No question.
Now you're looking at, commercial money that could be at 5.5%, 6%. Now you're borrowing that for 20 years and 20% down, and you're paying, on this, hypothetical $800,000 building, you could easily pay $500,000 to $600,000 in interest over the course of that loan.
Yeah.
And you're only going to have your interest rate locked for maybe 5 years because the bank doesn't want to tie that up for all that long. So it's an enormous amount of interest that you end up paying on this with, then you've got large payments with an owner finance deal. You work through the numbers of the owner and they want $800,000 and okay, well, what are the creative ways to get you $800,000 or $850,000 or $900,000? If they get $900,000, that's more money for them.
Yeah.
And a whole lot less for the buyer. So it really is a great win-win. And I think we'll see a lot more buyers in particular with a rising interest rate environment looking to do owner finance deals. And probably there's some education for guys like us to say to those sellers, here's the benefit for you in this. This isn't about me saving money. This is about both of us getting more from this deal.
I think that's a great idea. And I think we need to do that. Maybe we should do a joint video where we sort of share our experience, but we sort of speak to sellers. Maybe we'll do that.
I'd like that. Yeah.
Let's sketch that in some emails to each other. But let's just put some final numbers on this because I think real examples are great. Of the last 8 to 10 owner finance deals I've done, I've had interest rates as low as 2%. I've had down payments as small as $5,000. And these are on acquisitions that are north of 6 figures, right? So realize that really, for me, the conversation is, well, let's say it this way. In an owner finance deal, what I'm interested in is the monthly payment and the down payment. I don't care what you call the value because I can back into a value just by lowering interest rates. It doesn't matter. And then the other thing is all of my loans are 30 years, 30-year AMs, 30-year payments. So again, you can't do that in commercial, right? They're 5, 7, 10 years. So all of that. So this has been a great first section. Let's now rewind the clock to your origin story. And so how, you mentioned always being kind of interested in real estate, but sort of let's paint that picture where you were, why real estate, all of that.
Yep. So growing up, my dad still is a builder. And so I grew up around houses, single family houses. At one point he put in a small development, and at the end of this little road that he built, he built 2 duplexes and rented those out and had a pretty negative experience with tenants. I was young at the time. I wasn't obviously thinking about investing in real estate. I just remember hearing the conversations between my father and mother about tenant problems. So,
tenants and toilets. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So as I got into college and thinking long term, I thought, well, I'd like to have income that's passive. Even though I think we both know there's nothing truly passive about what we do, but it's certainly more passive than running an accounting practice. And I started to think about commercial, and I didn't know anything about commercial real estate. This was I graduated college in 98, so it was 20 plus years ago now. But that was kind of the idea that I had.
Yeah.
My wife and I got married 5 weeks after graduating from college.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I was a geology major because that was kind of fun and interesting. There weren't jobs in geology per se.
Yeah.
So I ended up, we moved to Maine a year after graduating from college in 99. I ended up starting a wholesale greenhouse with 4 partners.
Okay.
And we sold flowers to grocery stores and garden centers.
Huh.
I managed employees and managed the finances. My other primary partner was the head salesman and grower, and we had 3 investors.
Okay.
And we did that for 5 years. It's a tough industry to be in.
I can
it's
only
weather
imagine.
dependent, and customers are fickle. And after 5 years, I decided I wanted to do something different. I needed regular pay, hours, and benefits.
Sure.
And I clearly wasn't going to get it here. And the business had started to decline, and I left. And shortly thereafter, it ended up, failing completely. Auction of the real estate, the whole thing, and
Yeah.
it was a tough time for all the investors. And
Sure.
I had begun work on an MBA
Mhm.
and had taken a job about a half hour south of here, working for a company that sells trailers for trailer trucks, and I was doing internal kind of managerial accounting.
Yeah.
Preparing reports for the parts department, service department, sales department, reporting out to owners. I really liked my boss, but I realized I don't like having a boss. Great guy, but just, I needed to be self-employed.
Sure.
And I'd been there for 4 years, and by this time, we now had 4 kids.
Ooh.
And my wife is a stay-at-home mom, as I mentioned. She homeschools our kids. She also is an eBay seller. So in starting up the accounting practice, we kind of ramped up the eBay business to more or less cover our expenses, maybe less. And started the accounting practice 10 years ago. I met a guy, an accountant from Massachusetts, who was interested in at least helping fund the startup of the company. And he did that. Always thankful for that. But I started with 0 clients and grew the practice from there. And now we have a couple different services that we provide to our clients. I have a CPA that works with me. And an office manager and a data input specialist. So we've got a nice little team here, and I'm looking to continue to grow the accounting practice in 2019 by acquiring another practice.
Nice.
And then currently the plan is every 2 years to acquire another area of practice. There are a lot of older accountants in Maine, a lot of older people in Maine in general, but older accountants, and we'll be looking to buy up some practices to grow the practice that way, so that my W-2 job, if you will, continues to grow and more than provide for the family, while simultaneously growing the real estate portfolio.
Yeah, that's critical, right? Because again, people need to realize, right, what he's talking about is he's still focused on offense, right? He's focused on being very good at his W-2 job, and he's looking for ways to grow this. A lot of people I talk to go, I'm a real estate investor, and 99% of their focus goes over here. They skip jobs. They, shorter out. No, you have to keep your job. You have to be very good at your job, because, real estate investing, at least for most of us, is that side hustle that ultimately leads to a better place, right? It took us, my wife and I, 15 years to get to a point where, we can exit, be financially free. It's not tomorrow, right? Don't quit your job and think you're financially free tomorrow. So that's great. And I love how you're focused on offense. So let's now, let's skip forward and let's talk about the real estate side of the thing 3 to 5 years from now. What do you sort of see for yourself? Where does your empire sort of at in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I'll be 43 next month. My wife and I have kind of set out goals for each of the ends of the next decades, 50, 60, and 70.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we're planners. So it's
in
our
DNA.
nature.
I get it. Yeah.
We're both firstborn, which I think if you read the birth order books means we never should have gotten married, but it's worked out well for more than 20 years now.
Good.
So by 50, we'd like to own $2 million in real estate producing around 100 to 150,000 a year in cash flow. So they'd be, select properties. We're not buying everything that comes up.
Yep.
And that's our goal by 50. And then by 60, we'd like to 5x that, from 2 million to 10 million.
Wow. Okay.
And by 70 to 5x that, from 10 to 50 million.
Are you going to stay in your local area and do that? Or you think
probably not when we're in our 60s, but certainly in our 40s and 50s, there's a lot of opportunity around here in Maine.
I was just looking at those numbers going, wow, that went from 2 to 10 and 10 to 50. I'm like, yeah, that's a big number.
It is, but when you start to break it down, and you break it down into smaller and smaller pieces,
sure.
And what is the next, what is the next step? The one thing, if you will. I don't know if you've read Keller's book, The One Thing.
Oh yeah,
fantastic book. What is that one thing I can do right now, to advance towards that goal? And so for me, it was a real estate meetup group that a friend of mine started locally here on Tuesday night, and I met some other real estate investors there. A couple might become clients of the tax practice.
Exactly.
There are a couple others that we might end up working with on deals down the road, a home inspector, a couple of realtors.
Yeah.
Certainly this interview, certainly just stating goals.
Yeah.
Right? There's a certain accountability in just saying out loud, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, this is going to be out there for you and your kids to see. I mean, I can imagine your kids watching it going, Dad, remember.
Yeah. So it can be scary to state those goals. But as I look at those numbers, sure, they're large numbers, but people have scaled up much more quickly than that.
No question.
And I don't see that as those figures as impossible at all. I see them as really within our abilities. My wife is going to transition after this holiday season from being an eBay seller to being more involved with real estate.
Yeah.
She's very sharp. She's both the brains and the beauty of the family.
That's awesome.
And she'll be.
You need to Instagram that little piece right there. Just send that to her.
That's right. So we'll be working together on this, and she'll be doing a lot of the deal finding side of it and running numbers.
That's awesome.
And that will really, I think, help to speed up the process.
Yeah. Again, a couple of things for you there. I mean, again, it's been said in other interviews, but it keeps coming up. Real estate is a people business.
Right.
Network. Don't be shy. Get out. Meet some people. Not only will, in your case, help your day job, but I can tell you it's going to exponentially grow the next piece.
Yeah.
And really where my question came from the 10 to 50 was not that it's not impossible. It's just my feelings that sometimes there's markets that are just, you become the dominant fish and it's too tough to go from 10 to 50. Hence we got to go to the next market or the next market. So
that's right. Yeah.
Certainly possible.
And there's a lot of small towns in Maine where my practice is located. It's 20,000 people. And there's 2 investors that own a lot of the real estate on Main Street. Yeah. And a lot of towns are like that here, where it's just a couple of individuals that'll own, a lot of the, major buildings in town, and they bought them however many years ago. And so there will be opportunity in the future.
I see you either now or in the future placing some well-timed phone calls to say, hey, how do we owner finance a deal you've owned for 40 years? And
that's right. That's the hope. Exactly.
You go and go off on cruises or safaris or whatever you want to do for the last, X years.
I'd love to write you a big check every single month for 20 years.
Let's do it.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So this is part of the show where I sort of turn it over to you, where you can say anything you want, words of wisdom, ask for help if you're looking for private money, buyers, lists, clients for your accounting practice, whatever you want. The floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. I like to leave people with a quote. One of my favorite quotes is from John Wooden, famous basketball coach. And he says this: when opportunity arrives, it's too late to prepare. And, if you stop to think through what that really means, there are things that you and I can be doing today that will prepare us for opportunities that we can't even think about. So this year I decided to read 18 books in 2018, and every year I'll read one more book. It'll be 19 books in 2019, or at least that's my minimum.
I like it.
So doing a lot of reading, I'm active on Bigger Pockets. People can find me over there. And that's a great forum for anybody who's watching who's not on Bigger Pockets.
Absolutely.
A ton of free information, calculators, and everything there. It's a great asset. My accounting practice can be found at mainbeancounters.com. Maine, like the state, bean counters.
I love that. I love that. Maine bean counters. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, we work with a lot of local clients, but also out of state as well.
Yeah.
We have clients from all over the country that we work with, both real estate investors and non-real estate investors. We do a lot of simple 1040s right up through larger corporations.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of capacity there this coming year that we've planned in for the growth of the practice.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I just want to sort of reemphasize this. If you're watching my channel, there's a very good possibility you're in the real estate or at least looking to get in the real estate business. And I can tell you, as someone who struggled with their accountant years ago, having an accountant that understands real estate investing is vital. So if you don't have one, or your accountant is more of the, they do a W-2 or you use TurboTax and you're in the game now, I suggest you looking up Bob and having a conversation, because having an accountant who's in the game is vital, especially as the tax rules change, right? This whole 20% pass through and all that. I mean, there's just so much stuff going on that the average person doesn't know, but because you're in the game and you're an accountant, you can sort of synthesize that and bring it to the novice pretty clean. So that's I hope people look you up.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that.
All right. So thank you everybody for watching, and we'll get on to the next interview.